Hey, Curtis.
Hey, Oz.
What's your movie this week?
This week we're watching, or it's more like you're watching Deadpool and Wolverine and Little Shop of Horrors just down the road at your local AAA travel agency. This week we're watching Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
All kinds of modes of transportation. Planes, trains, automobiles,
Yep,
buses,
every
go-karts,
every
dune buggies.
Pixar Pixar related travel
Yeah.
movie is covered there.
Right. Segways.
Segways, Zeppelins,
Zip lines.
Zip them too.
Zeppelins. That part of the movie where they're just floating by in the Goodyear blimp. So
Yeah, with Indiana Jones is up there too.
no, no,
No ticket.
no ticket. So, welcome back, listeners and viewers, to another episode of Let's Talk About Flicks, the weekly podcast where we take a monthly theme. This month being Candyland, all John Candy, all month long.
Love it.
I'm one of your hosts, Oz.
I am the other host, Curtis.
And before we get moving, we do want to give a shout out to those faithful Patreon subscribers,
Mhm.
Don S., Aaron A., Mandy K., Melissa L., and Colleen K. Thank you yet again for your patronage.
Thank you, one and all.
This is episode 147 for us.
Wow, we're closing in on our sesquicentennial.
Yeah, closing in on year trois. That's French, I think. I don't know.
Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I don't think we can say that word here.
No. Yeah, it is. It is French because there's the phrase that's part of that all teenage boys love to throw around. Starts with menage and ends with three. So.
That's how it ends.
But Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, a movie that is another one of those, like last week, is Cerebus the three-headed dog?
I think so. That sounds right.
Yeah. So this is the John Hughes Cerebus approach again, written, directed, and produced by.
Yep.
Just
we could go Gleeok if we may want to make a Zelda reference,
that's
or
true.
Or what's the King Ghidorah from Godzilla?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all very Cerebesque.
Yep. Cerebish.
But Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is your movie this week. So I've got the cast.
Yeah. Who's in this movie?
Two people that matter.
Really, that's about it.
But there is some fun little. You don't.
Yeah, there's some little here's and there's.
Yeah, here's and there's. That's a good way to put it. We've got Steve Martin as Neil Page and John Candy as Del Griffith, and they are the two men on the poster art.
They are the planes and the trains.
Yes, and they combine to make the automobile. It's like the both ends of a horse on.
It's like Voltron.
Exactly. It's right. John Candy and Steve Martin are Voltron. And so, of course, I'll let you get into the plot of it when we get going. But other people in the movie, we've got Layla Robbins as Susan Page, the very straight-faced wife of Neil.
Yeah, and never on screen for more than 5 seconds at a time.
I don't think she can hold a straight face without it. But we get other, like you said, here and there's like Michael McKean as the state trooper, Dylan Baker as guy who lets them ride in his pickup, like Matthew Lawrence as Neil and Susan's son.
Yep, Matthew Lawrence.
Yeah, there's a Kevin Bacon in this. You know, as
there is a Kevin Bacon
as man racing Neil to a taxi. Like that's what he's in the credits as. Edie McClurg, Ben Stein, like.
The lawyer from the first Jurassic Park who gets eaten off the toilet.
Yeah,
he's there.
Ferris Bueller's dad is in this movie.
Yes, yep.
But it's just one of those that if you've seen enough '80s movies and especially enough John Hughes movies, you're going to be
you'll see some familiar faces.
I know that guy. So, but that's pretty much it. It's Steve Martin and John Candy.
It really is
for the
Candy
cast.
Martin
Those
show,
are the only two that matter. So. But what are Candy and Martin up to in this film?
Yeah. Again, what a good movie. We were chatting a little bit before we hit the record button, and what a great. I will use the word great movie.
Yeah, it is a great movie.
I watched it a couple of weeks ago and just kind of had it on in the background today just to kind of freshen it up in the memory and yeah, just the characters, the character work, the acting by Martin and Candy is
Yeah.
just so great in this.
Yeah.
So we start with the title card. We're in New York City 2 days before Thanksgiving, and Neil is there with his team, and they're just taking their sweet time, deciding on some sales pitch that
Yeah.
he's making them. It doesn't really matter.
No.
But it's just the whole point is that they're really taking their time. He's got a plane to catch. He's got to get to LaGuardia. He's got to get back to Chicago for Thanksgiving, because this is a John Hughes movie after all.
Yes.
The whole point is to get back to Chicago.
Yeah. Which I wonder if like Neil didn't live in Chicago.
Well, I mean, like most John Hughes, you get the idea it's probably North Shore.
Yeah. Like he spends a lot of we see a lot of Chicago at the end of it before he heads out to the suburbs. Like obviously when they walk up to his house at the end, spoiler alert, when they walk up to, it's like, that's not Chicago.
No, that's not Chicago. No. That's like Evanston or Winnetka.
Yeah. That home has grass. And that's not Chicago.
It's not just a concrete slab.
No, it's right. That house is wide, not thin and long. Like
a little bungalow.
That's right. That's not Chicago. Anyway.
So his co-worker, who's the dad for Ferris Bueller, is there, and Neil's like I gotta get out of here, catch a cab.
I got a 6 o'clock plane.
Yeah. So he goes out, and of course it's just rush hour.
Yes.
Just people everywhere, cars everywhere, and down the street he sees a cab. The fare light goes on, and across the way. And again, this movie was released in 1987, so this is just a couple years off the heels of Footloose.
Yeah.
And so he makes eye contact with Kevin Bacon across the street.
Right.
Never says a word. No lines, which I thought that was great. Like you cast this fresh-faced actor there who's kind of like, like a big young name right now, and he never says a word. He's got 30 seconds.
You just look at it and you're like, oh, Kevin Bacon, cool.
Kevin Bacon. Yeah, Kevin Bacon's in this.
That's it.
And so they're on opposite sides of the street, both racing each other to try to get this cab. And Kevin Bacon gets stopped by like some luggage, and so Neil's laughing. He thinks he gets it, and right before he gets to the cab, he trips over this gigantic trunk. Somebody left like a luggage trunk just sitting right off the curb, trips all over it. And in the meantime, Kevin Bacon gets the cab, kind of gives like the little sailor salute. Yeah, to Neil.
Yeah. Nice competition, but I win.
So Neil ends up seeing another cab and runs to it, and he's trying to barter, with some Wall Street yuppie, for fare here.
As a lawyer.
Yeah. And in the meantime, this same trunk that he tripped over is getting loaded into the back of the cab, and so Neil goes to open the door as the car is about to leave, and we see John Candy's Dell character just kind of like he was shocked.
Yeah, he does. He chased him seemingly several blocks.
Yes, kind of just ran to LaGuardia.
Yeah.
So eventually Neil gets to the airport. Flight has been delayed. So we get a little bit of Susan at home. That's, again, as we said during the character rundown, like really, this is probably the only time I'll even mention Susan until the end, just because like they will occasionally cut back to her and the family just to kind of remind you of what Neil is trying to get back to.
Right. Yeah. Clearly they have to establish the finish line for this movie.
Yes. Yeah. So like she's the target, she's the goal. And so, we see her just a little bit there. In the airport, Neil spots Dell. He recognizes the man who stole his cab. And of course, Dell is reading a book called The Canadian Mounted. Oz, have you seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet?
I have not.
Okay. I will not get into any spoilers. At the time of this recording, I think we're 3 weekends out from the release of Deadpool and Wolverine. That you could make the argument, despite the fact, it's a comic book, it's an MCU movie and all that. Deadpool and Wolverine is a buddy comedy in a lot of ways.
That doesn't surprise me.
And it and I'm not exaggerating here. It directly references planes, trains, and automobiles at least 3 times that I've spotted. At one point, Wade's coworker has a copy of the Canadian Mounted.
Okay, that makes sense then with your Deadpool Wolverine reference.
Yes. There's also this will come up a little bit later on as we get through the plot here, but there's another character in Deadpool and Wolverine that has a coffee mug that says "I like me" on it.
Okay. Huh.
And I don't think I'm spoiling anything here, but at one point in the movie, like they end up in the void, which is where discarded things from universes go, and you see the burned out car from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles there.
Huh.
So, and Ryan Reynolds he's even like verbally acknowledged like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was the biggest influence on Deadpool and Wolverine.
It's not an obscure reference, because I mean obviously a John Hughes movie in the 80s, but it is fun to just that wouldn't be the film that you would think would lead into Deadpool Wolverine.
Deadpool and Wolverine, yeah. Well, I think Ryan Reynolds, John Candy, they're both Canadian, and Ryan Reynolds takes a lot of pride,
and Hugh Jackman is too, because Wolverine is.
Yes, because Wolverine. So they made him an honorary Canadian citizen. He's got maple syrup for blood at this point.
Is Australia still recognized as a British something or other, or no?
I wish I was smart enough to know that.
But I know at one point they were.
Yeah,
and Canada still is ish. So
I think there's an ish there.
So they're cousins.
Join us for the making of this episode as we reveal,
where we just sit around going, "Huh?
Yes, are these commonwealths of the British Empire?"
Yeah, with Oz and Curtis.
Yeah,
commonwealths with Curtis.
Of the British
I'm not going to have the answers
with Curtis, and that's it. Patreon subscriber Mandy K is also a Patreon subscriber of that show as well.
I could see Patreon subscriber Don S knowing the answer to that question.
Oh yeah. He's entering it in the comments right now to correct us. So they're sitting in the terminal there, and Dell's he just kind of laughs as like Neil's like confronts him. Oh yeah, that was what a moment that was.
Yeah, don't I know you?
Like I'm sorry, and he's kind of laughing. He's going through it, and Neil is a very different person. Yes. Neil is very, very direct. He's very kind of, he doesn't want really anything to do with the chit chat.
No,
he's still upset and offended.
Yeah,
he can't get over the fact that he perceives that Dell stole his cab. So they eventually get on the plane, and Neil's first class ticket has been changed to coach, and of course is seated right next to Dell.
Of course.
Yeah. Who won't stop talking. He introduces himself as the best in the world at selling shower rings.
Right. And again, just one of those goofy 80s, like extremely obscure things. Like,
yeah.
You don't see much of it in today's films, but unless they're just being like really like farcical, but it feels like in the 80s there was just this merriment amongst films that it's like, just be goofy, like I sell shower curtain ring division,
plastic shower curtain
and it's like, and you're just like, oh, that's kind of funny, and then you just accept it because they told you it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't see that in today's movies where it's like, I sell kitchen shelf liners.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, it'd be funny if you did.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to be remembered as is an annoying blabbermouth.
Right. And Neil tries to politely tell him too. Is like, I'm not really into the chit chat. I'd rather just read this article.
He's trying through gritted teeth to try to get out of the conversation. Dell takes off his shoes and his socks. Oh, boy, are my dogs barking today.
To be fair, I think that would probably annoy anybody, whether you're accepting of Dell's personality or not. Like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah. And Dell calls it to Neil. He says, there's I got $6 and an important body part that says we're not landing in Chicago.
Right.
And it turns out they get rerouted because there's a huge blizzard that shut down O'Hare. And so they get rerouted all the way to Wichita.
Exactly.
Which is a pretty good distance away from Chicago. That must have been some kind of blizzard there.
The entire state of Illinois and northern Missouri.
And Missouri and Iowa.
Yeah.
All the way to Wichita, which is probably a good, 12, maybe 14 hours by road from Chicago?
Yeah, it's
Wichita?
I mean, it's on the other side of Missouri.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not like there on like the Kansas City border.
It's pretty far into Kansas as well, yeah. So they're all the way there. Neil calls Susan when they arrive. Yeah, we've been routed to Wichita. Ben Stein announces then that the flight, the rescheduled flight to Chicago is now canceled. Neil can't get a room, but of course Dell knows a local hotel owner there
because he sold him rings.
I sold him rings. So I can get you a room. They take the cab driven by Doobie the cab driver.
It's like Megadeth on wheels.
Yeah, it's hydraulics and I almost said LED lights. I'm sure they weren't LED, but like lights all over the car. Yeah. And they end up at the Braidwood Inn. A lot of this movie, Oz, of course, like most John Hughes movies, was shot in and around the Chicago area. Now, Braidwood is about 45 minutes due west of Grant Park, the town I grew up in. And I actually, in high school, we used to play, what was that there's a little town there. So this is making for great podcast audio here.
We're back to geography hour.
Yes. Geography with Oz and Curtis. Gardner. It was we played Gardner, which is right there in 55. And Braidwood, of all the communities, kind of in the area where I grew up, was a little more affluent because they had a nuclear power plant in town.
Okay.
Which brought in a bunch of revenue
and three-eyed fish.
Yes. And so the high school there, at least per like mid 90s standards, was an amazing high
fortress,
school. Yeah. So again, this is supposed to be in Wichita, but I know the Braidwood Inn was literally in Braidwood, Illinois, where they shot this.
Oh, that's good, because I was going to say, even with it being John Hughes, it was probably filmed in the gym of New Trier High School.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing them. Yeah. So while they're checking in, they get their credit cards mixed up, and they have to share not just a room but a single bed.
Yes.
And of course, we quickly get to know, we get a pretty good idea how uptight Neil is.
That's an understatement.
But Dell, Neil takes a shower and he gets out, and there's just every towel in the bathroom except for a washcloth is wet and sopping wet on the floor.
I'm the kind of person, and it is what it is. I tend to overthink scenes like this in movies. Not that I think about John Candy getting out of the shower, but I try to be fairly conservative with my time and towel usage. But I try to picture I've given dogs baths before, so I know what dogs do. But it's for Dell to come out of the shower and then need several towels to dry off. And like you said, they're sopping wet.
Yeah, they're not just damp.
No, don't dry off while you're showering.
Yeah, it's
Dell.
they've been submerged in water.
It's just to see the state of the bathroom. And it's wow.
And you get the idea, and my apologies if this is taking a haul away from you later on.
Not.
But did this all happen while Neil was in the shower?
Yeah.
He gets out of the shower and he's wide-eyed. Yeah. So apparently it didn't look like that when he got in the shower.
But yeah,
I guess kudos to Dell for being discreet while Neil was in the shower.
But it's funny because obviously it's just set design, or they would have filmed part of it. But it's but just sometimes the set design just is so hyper realistic. We gotta establish Dell as a slob, but still that's not realistic for one shower. I get it if that's his bathroom after a week there.
Yeah.
But one bathroom trip.
Yep. He's his socks are soaking in the sink, and so I mean you get the idea also that Dell's on the road a lot.
Yes.
He called it when they were in the air. We're not landing in Chicago. He's something, his sixth sense set him off. Maybe he saw the flight attendants chatting nervously or something, but he's on top of all this stuff. Right. And he knows that the first thing you do when you get off the plane in a situation like this is you call a hotel.
Yeah. Get it done.
So,
don't call family, call a hotel.
Yeah, so you if you're reading between the lines, Dell is on the road a lot and
Yes.
knows how to effectively travel.
Right.
So yeah, Niels dries himself off with a dry washcloth
in a very Steve Martin physical humor way. Like,
yes, just patting himself with
kind
the
of
towel.
keeps his elbows out and like.
Oh, so like Dell looks at a picture of a woman, while Neil is struggling, to dry off and everything, and and in bed, they're trying to go to bed, and Dell has exploded several beer cans because he left them on the vibrating bed.
Right.
So they have to sleep in a wet bed, that's wet with beer. And Dell is smoking. He's cracking every bone in his body. He's like doing that with his sinuses the whole time. Well, I gotta clear my sinuses, otherwise I'm gonna snore all day.
You wouldn't want that noise.
Yeah. And Neil just he's had it.
Yes.
He's had it. Like, he was chatting on the plane. He took his cab. He won't let him sleep. And he's had it. Neil just goes off on him. And it's a really startling moment. We're maybe 20 minutes into the movie here. And Neil just unloads on him. Dell is clearly very hurt.
As he should be. Like, Neil, he just went too far.
Yeah, and Dell hangs with him in the back and forth for a while, and so he responds like you're really uptight. Calls him a couple other things, but Neil won't let it go.
Right,
and he just keeps going, and eventually Dell is just standing there and taking it. And after Neil has finally had his say, Dell just looks at him and just says, "I like me.
Yeah,
my wife likes me. People who I work with like me. I'm not going to change. This is the real, authentic me."
And like we were talking pre-show, that line delivery from John Candy it's my favorite part of the movie. Just watching him stand there and take the victimization. Yeah. And then just still being proud enough to be like, I like who I am. Like, and I was just really proud of him. Yeah. Out of that character for that.
Despite being clearly hurt.
Yeah,
because he was.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like he just brushed off what Neil said.
Right.
But he was but again, he still had the pride and his own sense of dignity. Yeah. To confidently say that despite being incredibly hurt. So yeah, the more I was really thinking about this movie, or as the day went on today, like, it really stuck with me, especially these moments. And just how authentic of a character Dell is.
Yes.
Dell Griffith is, despite, I did not grow up with this movie like I grew up with The Great Outdoors.
Right.
And, I don't think I watched this movie in its entirety, probably until my early to mid 20s. And I just this afternoon came to the conclusion that I need to make this movie a kind of a routine, as I revisit, some of the things I like. That's how much I like the Dell Griffith character.
Yeah, it is. It's a great character. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I mean, just before we even get into the Candy and Martin stuff, just it takes Steve Martin's nastiness to really bring that to the forefront of Dell's character, because everything up to this point is pretty obnoxious. Like, even, understanding, of the Dell character this far, of like, you're being sociable, which is fine, but you're not reading the social cues of someone who doesn't want to socialize. Like, they're just, Steven tried to tell him, like, let me, and Dell's always there, which is, again, fine. But there's that little piece of Dell up to this point that is kind of like we've talked before. It's the Jack Black of it. Yeah. It's
he's always a little too much.
It's just little, just turned up a little too loud. Yeah. And it's like, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with him. It's like, overall, it's like, great guy, but it's like, just not right now. Like, I don't need it right now. I don't know you well enough.
Yeah. Dell's not a perfect person by any means.
No. But seeing this of just him just getting throttled with everything Neil's feeling. Mm-hmm. And then just to still be there, like, but I like who I am. Like, I'm like, good for you.
Yeah. If only all of us had the confidence to kind of stand our ground like that and be comfortable with who we are.
Well, and you dig a little deeper. I'd read in the trivia that like Steve Martin and John Candy have both said that this was their favorite movie, like of each of their careers.
Yeah.
This one, and it's like there's probably a little bit of like realism there too, because you know, you hear a lot about John Candy. It's like that kind of guy, always there for everyone, but there's just that sadness in there too.
Yeah.
And so like I don't know, I really liked this part.
Yeah. So, you know, Neil doesn't verbally apologize, but his body language is clearly screaming guilt. So he does get back into bed. While they both do eventually fall asleep with the beer-soaked bed. And while they do so, a burglar sneaks in and just steals all the cash out of their wallets. So they wake the next day with Del spooning Neil, gives him a gentle little kiss on the ear, and Del's hand is comfortably between two pillows, and they both realize those aren't pillows. And of course, they both get out of bed. And Neil's first, like, of course, Neil just has to soak back into his masculinity. Yeah. Oh, you see the Bears game last week? Yeah, hell of a game.
I don't know about you. I got the sense that. Did you get the vibe that it was the cab driver that robbed him?
I did not put that together.
I felt,
but it wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Right, because I could be wrong. It appeared. Let me see if I can find it here. If I could find it quickly.
It was Doobie the cab driver.
Right. Yeah, Larry Hankin, who he was Mr. Heckles and Friends. Mm-hmm. He was the police sergeant in or one of the sergeants in Home Alone. Like,
yeah, I knew he looked familiar.
Yeah, and so I think it was him. I think it was Doobie that robbed him.
I mean, you gotta pay those car hydraulics are gonna pay for themselves.
And he knew where they were because he dropped them off.
Yeah.
So true.
He knew they were from out of town, so they were probably gonna have cash on them.
I'm gonna research that a little bit. You go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, at breakfast, Del tells Neil, you know, God, there's no way you're gonna get home to Chicago for Thanksgiving by plane, and suggests that they go by his buddy's train. And then they realize they've been robbed.
Right.
So Del's buddy's son, played by Dylan Baker, shows up. I don't know if he also has sinus problems, but maybe needs a Claritin.
It's a Kansas thing.
Yeah. Lots of sinus activity and chews a lot of tobacco.
Yes.
Fun little performance by Dylan Baker here. He does give him a ride in the back of the pickup truck to Stubbsville, which is approximately a 50-minute drive because the train doesn't run out of Wichita.
It was not Larry Hankin. It was Gary. No. Gary Riley was the motel thief.
Oh, so, it's always Gary Riley.
He's kind of pigeonholed himself as silhouetted hotel thief in movies.
That's Bill O's brother.
Yeah, Bill O.
Uh-huh.
Founder of the auto parts store.
Yes. Yep. Same family. I do like, again, I just caught this in this. I don't know. This tickled my funny bone extra the second time through. But like when they arrive at the train station, you cut to Del's kind of frozen face, then you cut to Neil's kind of frozen face, and there was a dog, like a mean dog in the back with him, and then it cuts to the dog's frozen face, but he's just snarling and growling.
Right. It's like you got a frozen snarl.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't be happy. I can't imagine he was happy.
No,
being back there. So they're not seated together on the train, so they say their goodbyes. Del kind of asks for his address. He wants to pay Neil back, and Neil just it's a gift. Don't worry. He just does. He wants to be rid of Del.
Yeah, let's get out of this.
Yeah. So of course Neil ends up starting to chat up a passenger on the train. So you start to see just a little bit here.
Yeah,
that. Del's kind of rubbing off on him, but of course the train breaks down.
Well, and a little bit of the Del, but I also got just Neil finally feeling like that nightmare's over. Like, just relaxing a little bit. Let his guard
down a little bit.
Just relaxing a little bit, like you said, because he wasn't like chatting up that girl, but just feeling like, I'm going home. Like, finally, this train's going to Chicago. I'm going home.
And then the train breaks down.
Yeah, then the train breaks down.
And they're in the middle of Kansas because they make a reference to Jefferson City,
Yeah.
which is still in the western side of or sorry, Missouri, not
Yeah,
Kansas,
I see,
Missouri there. And so Neil sees Dell dragging his trunk, and so he goes up and grabs the other half of it and helps him.
Which
to the bus.
I thought was nice because it's like that kind of turned the page because he didn't want to.
Yeah,
but
he kind of like,
yeah,
I know him. I'm going to help him,
right?
Begrudgingly, but he did. So they're cut to them by the crowded bus. Dell is now wearing a burgundy tuxedo. and next to them, there's a young couple making out. I do like where Neil's kind of looking at him, and the guy kind of catches him looking. Yeah. Would you write it just right into the camera? Why don't you take a picture?
Well, because even Dell, like Neil's not paying attention. Dell's kind of elbowing him. Hey, Neil, look at that! Look at that!
Check it out! Yeah,
it's kind of gross. Like, look,
but
those young people are making out. Let's watch.
Of course, yeah. Neil's the one who gets caught too, which is even more funny.
Yeah.
Of course, Dell is entertaining the bus by singing songs. Neil tries to join in, and it doesn't work. But of course, Dell saves him by starting the Flintstones theme. I love the wide shot too as they're pulling into St. Louis, and you just hear Dell, Flintstones, beat the Flintstones. So of course, the bus ticket is only good to St. Louis, and so at this bus terminal in St. Louis, Dell is selling shower curtains to try to get some extra cash.
It's kind of a fun little montage here.
Yeah. Yeah, and depending on who the audience is, sometimes they're shower curtains, sometimes they're art, sometimes they're earrings. I love he's talking to 3 teenage girls. You get these, they'll make you look 19, and they all just fork their money.
They all have shower curtains hanging from their ears.
It's great. Eating dinner, Neil admits, I haven't been home enough, and Dell just kind of casually just says, I haven't been home in years.
Yeah. Neil calls him on it. It's like years. Oh, it's almost like it's figure speed. I haven't been home in a long time. Like,
yeah,
but yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so as they're closing up dinner, Neil suggests, it'll just be easier if we go our own ways.
Right.
Traveling alone is easier than traveling in pairs. And Dell kind of becomes upset.
He does.
It's like we've gone this far.
Right.
Been to New York to Wichita to Jefferson City to St. Louis and so and I think Dell is right to feel upset there.
He should, yeah.
The next morning at the airport car rental, Neil's rental car is not in the spot. Oh. It's one of those where like the rental cars are in a remote location.
Oh yeah, like 3 miles
mile
away,
away from the airport. So he has to walk all the way back through the snow to the terminal. And apparently St. Louis got hit by the snowstorm too.
Yes.
There's snow
a lot of
St.
snow.
Louis. Yeah. So Neil walks in and and he's wet. He's disheveled, and he is quite upset. And he runs across cheery Edie McClurg working the counter at the rent-a-car place.
Who's having a conversation with her sister about Thanksgiving dinner. She's got a line of people.
Yeah.
She's
big
on the
old smile on her face, like bright blue eyes.
You know I can't cook.
I'll bring the crescent roll.
He walks up and she just gives him that finger like, hold on a second, I'm almost done.
Gotta see what casserole it's so-and-so's bringing. And Neil, and we were talking a little pre-show, and you said that this sequence was 60 seconds on the nose.
1 minute on the nose.
And how many F-bombs does he drop?
19.
I
think he drops 18 and she drops 1.
She gets the last one, the most important one.
Like we're talking like 1 every 3 seconds.
Yes. And I mean, he's upset because the rental car wasn't in the spot, which again, I think Neil was right to feel upset there, but that's not the most tactful of approaches, it's, and he threw his paperwork. He was so upset he threw it and didn't bring it with, and she tells him that, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, Oz. You will not be able to rent another vehicle.
You are out of luck.
Yes. Yes.
Which I'm like, come on. You guys have a computer system. Like, you don't have that sheet of paper? Well, you're screwed then. Like, it's in the system.
So
Although I
back up,
wouldn't have made
yeah.
much of an effort to look him up either if he was
Yeah,
talking to me that way.
after
Yeah.
that, yeah. And she even said, like, I don't like the way you're talking to me right
I
now,
have a
sir.
feeling, like, of course, I'm probably way wrong, but like, that just Steve Martin, I think there's a lot of his filmography where he's just kind of wholesome dad.
Yeah.
That you just, when you see this little tirade, you're like, I doubt he's said that word that many times ever. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of what one of the things like the movie's known for
Yeah.
is this
Is
little
that 60
tirade.
second?
Yeah,
Yeah. So back outside, Neil's trying to get a cab. Well, I'm going to Chicago. And he upsets the guy who's kind of running like the cab station there, kind
yeah.
of coordinating things, who punches him out. And Dell pulls up, literally almost runs over Neil, who's
Almost,
punched out and laid out, literally laid out in the street.
almost get a Toxic Avenger moment.
Yeah.
head
Yeah,
full of head full of hamburger.
Watermelon head.
full of hamburger. Oh, watermelon head.
Oh, watermelon head. So he, Dell rented a car. I'll drive you to Chicago. So they're back together again. And so while driving, Dell tells Neil, like, you need to go with the flow more often. And of course, Neil's struggling with that because that's not how Neil operates.
Right.
Um, while singing to Ray Charles, Neil's asleep because now it's pitch black out. Dell accidentally throws a cigarette in the back seat. He's trying to take his jacket off. He somehow gets both sleeves stuck, so he can't grip the steering wheel with his hands. Like his arms are both pinned down.
At no point he even tries to wake Neil up by just yelling his name.
Yeah. I thought about that too, but it's like Neil's mad enough at me as like I don't want to get in another argument.
Yeah. I probably still would have tried.
Yeah. So he ends up on because they're on I-55 at this point.
Yeah.
And so he ends up going north in the southbound lanes.
Yes.
And there's a car, of course, in the northbound lanes that are trying to get their attention. Like, hey, you're going the wrong way. How do they know where we're going?
I love that line too. They're full of it. Oh, they know where we're going.
They know where we're going.
Which then, Neil's like, you're right. Thank you. Like, you don't know where we're going.
And so Neil kind of looks down and he notices, like, the big grass median.
Yeah, realizes
to his immediate right, and the car's a little further over than they thought. Look up, and there's two semis next to each other, barreling down on them.
Yeah.
And of course, they thread the needle and go through. And in one of my favorite sequences here, it's just dumb, silly for silly's sake.
It's just that John Hughes is like, he brings this piece.
Yes. It cuts to them, and it's just their skeletons dressed in their clothes. Right?
John Candy's dressed as the devil, like
there's
Spirit Halloween devil.
Yeah, Spirit Halloween devil. Yeah, and just a silly scene. And like there was another similar sequence at Home Alone 2.
Yeah.
Where Daniel Stern's character is getting electrocuted and he turns into a skeleton for a moment. It's just complete with facial hair and everything too.
So dumb. Like it's just
it's dumb.
But it's fun.
I can't help but like it.
Because it's so innocent that they're like, it just shows like I feel like someone like John Hughes has got enough credibility as a filmmaker to throw something like that in because it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't fit the vibe of the whole rest of the movie at all.
No, it doesn't, but it still somehow works.
But it's just fun. Like, because the situation they're in right now is so bonkers that, like, let's just throw that in.
May as well just lean even further into it.
Right.
So, Dell's trying to laugh. Like, well, that happened. I guess we're safe now. And Neil's just not having it. Neil's like, we almost died. How could you do this? We see a sign they're still 102 miles from Chicago. So as they're just sitting on Dell's trunk, taking a moment, they look back, and of course the car is now on fire.
Yeah. And big fire.
Yeah. And Neil's laughing, and it's like, oh, you finally got yours, Dell. What's the rental company going to think of this? Well, I used your credit card, right. Neil. So they end up, they get back in the burning car, which somehow still works, still drives.
Yeah, well, and the reason why that was such a big deal about is Neil gets in the car and says, I'm going to put my wallet in the glove box. Don't let me forget it's there. And so that's why the whole credit card thing flipped out, because, Neil was chastising Dell for having his, you stole my credit card. I can't believe you did it. Well, okay, but you still have it though. So that's good, because mine's burnt to credit. And he's like, well, last time we stopped, I put it back in your wallet. So now we're back to, they have no cash. Now they have no credit card.
They have no credit cards. Yeah. And they're stuck in the middle of the night on I-55.
Yeah.
So they get back in this burned out car, and they do make it to like an exit to a hotel there. And Neil's just, no, like, we are done. I'm getting a room by myself.
Yeah.
Doesn't have enough cash, but he has apparently an expense of enough watch.
And thankfully, back in the late 80s, early 90s, everyone in the U.S. was aware of the price of watches. Like, all you had to do was show them a watch, and they're like, oh, that's a nice watch.
That's a nice watch. That's an 80s watch.
Yeah.
The Casio Cool.
Yeah. That is what Dell's like. He tries to sell a room too. Like, I have a Casio.
So Neil gets a room and Dell doesn't.
Right.
Neil's room's got 2 beds in it, and Dell just goes outside to sleep in the car, and the camera kind of goes with him, and he's sitting in the car talking to himself, and he's kind of talking to Marie. Like, when am I ever going to wake up? Wishes Marie was with him.
Yeah.
Eventually, Neil goes to the window and invites him back in, and they do have kind of a moment. Like, they drink some of the tiny booze bottles that are in the room.
It was a fun little go with the flow kind of moment.
Yeah. Dell's kind of like, oh, like, my entire legacy is selling shower rings, and Neil says, well, I mean, at least, Dell, you've got your wife to love and to grow old with. And Dell pauses, but validates, and they toast to the wives. And Neil finally admits, you know what? When I look back, I'm going to laugh about this. And then Dell begins laughing, and Neil ends up joining them. Yeah. So they do have kind of a little come to peace moment.
A little bit,
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next morning, they can't get the car out of the snow. Dell ends up backing it directly through the motel.
Oh, my. You're not going to get a license plate off this guy.
Nope. So they end up jumping and just leaving. And they're singing together. And, of course, Officer Lenny from Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah.
Officer David St. Hubbins.
Yeah, I almost said St. Hubbins.
Yeah, I almost said Nigel Tufnell. Yeah, so Officer Michael McKeon pulls them over for speeding. You know how fast you're going? Well, the speedometer is melted.
Yeah, so. I don't. I really don't.
I don't. And of course, Dell is just all smiles. Yeah. He's trying to charm his way through it.
Going 78. Woo, that's fast.
That is fast. Yep. And they end up impounding the car because it's a burned out husk.
Yeah.
It's not safe to drive.
Like, you sure you think this car's highway safe? Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, the radio works. Yeah, you'd be surprised. So they tow the car, and Neil and Dell end up in Woodstock, Illinois. Although it's not Woodstock in the movie, but this is where there's a couple of moments here in my now hometown. So they end up outside of the old Woodstock courthouse in the square.
Okay.
They end up catching a ride with a semi. Is it hauling milk? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That drives up Main Street. You see the downtown Woodstock movie theater there.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The driver is paranoid. He won't let anybody in the cab.
Despite Dell getting out of the cab.
Yes, I noticed that as well. So apparently only for short stints.
Because he's like, at least the heater works. He's not comfortable with people riding up front with him. You just got out of the passenger seat.
So they end up riding 3 hours in the refrigerated trailer.
Right.
Along with the milk. So we're finally in Chicago, Oz. Yes. They're at the train station downtown. I think it's like, it's like Van Buren and Roosevelt or something like that. Yeah.
Which is a really odd place for this semi to drop them off at.
The bean was all out of milk.
Where are you going? Oh, I'm taking this to Van Buren.
Shut aquarium. So, they say their goodbyes. Neil is grateful for Dell. You, despite everything, you got me home.
Yes.
You got me home. Neil admits to being a little wiser. They give each other a big, genuine hug. And, Del, give my best to your family and vice versa. Say hi to Marie for me. So Neil's riding the train, and as he's riding, we see some flashbacks. Neil is deep in thought. He's really contemplative here. He's flashing back to some of the rough moments in the trip, some of the fun moments, and then ends up kind of remembering a couple specific things that Del said.
Yeah.
I haven't been home in years.
Yeah.
And this entire movie, Oz, has been about Neil's journey.
Right.
And at this point, with about 5 minutes left in the movie, I found myself thinking, all I've been thinking about is Neil's journey.
Yeah.
Where's Del been going this whole time?
Right. Because he's been the sidekick.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I guess obviously if he's going to be on that flight to Chicago, we assume that's where he was headed anyway. But there, like you said, there really was no conversation about where his journey is headed.
Yeah, it was more about Del getting Neil to Chicago than Del getting Del to Chicago. And Neil realizes something, so he changes trains and goes back to the station and finds that Del is still sitting there. He's sitting there with his luggage and with his trunk, and Neil just asks, "What are you doing? Like, where are you going?" And Del just admits, "I don't have a home.
Yeah,
Marie's been dead for 8 years."
Right.
And I know the first time I saw this movie, that hit me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't see that coming. They did a good job of hiding that.
Right. They did. And it hits, like, for me, because I watched it yesterday, and it was my first time watching it all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me, and there was mild confusion, a little bit of anger, because, again, like, I felt like I got tricked. I got tricked into thinking about Neil the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like, John, Del's right there. And it's like, I kind of felt like a buffoon. Like, why didn't I give any thought to what he's doing?
Yeah, because they would cut away occasionally to Neil's family, and he'd be talking on the phone with his wife.
Keep reminding us what this is about.
Of Neil's journey,
Right.
but we as the audience, I think this was very clever filmmaking,
very much
storytelling, that it's always focused on Neil and where's Del going this whole time, and he doesn't have a home, and so we cut to them, one hand on either side of Del's trunk, walking up to Neil's home. Every Time You Go Away plays as they walk in, and
but like
a cover,
like the Wish version of it. Like, come on, I don't want the Timu Every Time You Go Away. I don't mind that song.
Yeah,
because it's such a John Hughes song.
Yeah, it's a very like mid to late 80s kind of
such a John Hughes movie song that when I was like, oh, all right, I like the song, and then it kicked in with the cover. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Unless it's Letters to Cleo, I don't want to hear a cover of a song I like.
Letters to Cleo.
That's it. Only Letters to Cleo.
Ben Wyatt's favorite band from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, it was Ben Wyatt's favorite.
Yeah, and him and his calzones.
Yeah.
So Neil introduces a friend of mine to the family, gives Susan a big kiss as the camera freezes on Del's very happy and grateful face.
Which would be the second week in a row we've finished on a John Candy freeze frame. So.
In a John Hughes movie.
In a triple John Hughes movie.
In a late 80s John Hughes movie.
In a Cerebus Hughes movie.
Cerebus.
Written, directed, and produced by John Hughes.
Best Boy.
That's right.
Written, directed, and Best Boy by John Hughes.
Right. Visual graphics by John Hughes.
All right. And we get credits roll. Any final thoughts, Oz, before we get on with the comedy bits?
This has just been such a great month.
Yeah.
Like, it really has.
It's like eating a stick of butter.
Exactly. Deep fried in butter.
Yes.
Wrap butter in cornflakes, fry it in more butter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, please. That has been this month.
I wonder what killed John Candy. Deep fried butter.
Deep fried butter. Yeah. All right, hey folks, it's that point in the show where Oz and I will each give our own unique rating to the film we've been yapping about, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Hey Oz, how would you rate this flick?
I'm going to give it a perfect trip.
A perfect trip.
No problems at all. Just
Mhm.
smooth sailing.
There you go.
What are you giving it?
I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 on TripAdvisor.
Oh, nice. Nice. I'm typing it in so I don't forget what it is, so I can download the graphic.
I was originally going to say 88 shower rings.
Oh, that would work too.
But something about what you said inspired me to change it to TripAdvisor. So why not?
What did I say to make you?
I don't remember, but it's like I know
so inspirational.
Something about what you said is like, let's pivot. All right, folks. Next up, Oz and I have been scouring the interwebs, searching for unprofessional reviews that tickle our funny bones, and we hope they tickle yours as well. And our next comedy segment, Outside Insights. Hey, Oz, what's your outside insight?
I've got two. I've got two short ones. The first one here is there it is. By both of these are on Amazon. This one was from Tall Tales. Taul. Tall. It's titled Blaspheming. It's one star review.
Okay.
I do love this movie and Precious John Candy, but Steve Martin cursed God's name in vain 3 times. I just can't understand why this type of trash has to be added, as if it would be an improvement. The scriptwriter knows full well that children would be watching this movie. He knew it.
Yeah, they knew it.
That's Satanist John Hughes. He knew it.
Yep. This movie about 2 middle-aged men on a bus from Jefferson City to St. Louis is going to draw the child viewer.
Kids are going to rent it for their sleepovers. Kids love Steve Martin.
They love their wild and crazy guys.
Let's watch a wild and crazy movie, guys. My second one is another 1-star review by Cactus Flower. Not what I remembered is the title.
I think that was a Mick Foley wrestling persona, was it not? Cactus Flower.
That was his wife.
Yeah, I think he tag teamed with Kane at one point.
Sable.
Sable.
You just called her Cactus Flower.
Cactus Flower.
So another 1-star review. Don't get this thinking you're going to get the sanitized version you saw on TV years ago. It would have been just as funny without some of the scenes and language. I would not give it to either of my grandsons just on principle. One is 22 and the other's 14. I remember seeing this movie on TV and it was scrubbed of objectionable. But as nothing is objectionable anymore, there it is to offend these few remaining who are offended by the flying F word. So, a couple of Neils in my reviews. What do you got for your outside insight?
I think Neil had a hand in mine. I think we are dipping from the same inkwell here. Mine's a 1 out of 10 from the Internet Movie Database, just from a couple years ago, from Jacob Van Dorp, left in December of 2022 from the rich and famous Van Dorps.
The Van Dorp.
The Van Dorps. I think I visited their mansion in Asheville, North Carolina.
The Van Dorps.
The Van Dorps. They have their own winery.
They made their money on sham wows.
I've got an 81 Van Dorp in the humidor. Sham wow. I only drink the finest Van Dorp.
You may not have heard of us before we got our sham wow fortune. Carl Van Dorp. Oh, man.
1 out of 10. Didn't have very high expectations considering the age of the movie, but even my low expectations proved too much. Terribly unfunny jokes, foul language that makes it unsuitable for kids, terrible acting. The characters make absolutely idiotic decisions. That is the opposite of what any reasonable person would do. Final comment, this movie is unwatchable garbage and a complete waste of time. I like how this person typed in final comment.
Yeah. Final comment.
Final comment.
Oh boy.
Flawless victory.
Finish him. That's what he thought right before he got to the end of this.
Finish
it.
Your review.
Final comment.
Toasty.
Oh my.
Next up, folks, is the Oz and Curtis Let's Talk About Flicks signature segment, the 3-2-1, in which Oz and I will each share 3 goods, 2 bads, and 1 toasty. 1 about this week's movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Hey, Oz, what are your 3 goods?
My first one is I don't know if you picked it up. There was quite a few times in the score where they switched over to the They Live soundtrack.
Really? I did not.
They didn't really do it, but it was just very Western-esque, like Roddy Piper coming into like the Hooverville kind of feel to
Okay.
it. That's like just it was really when Neil and Del were still at odds, like before they started to bridge their gap. But it was there quite a bit. Like it was enough that I was like, oh yeah, it's back. Like it's like not quite as obvious as the Cammy score from The Great Outdoors.
The Cammy score, which was the official name of the orchestral piece.
Cammy score.
The Cammy score.
But go back.
That's what Buck was trying to do too.
Yeah. True. He tried to do the Cammy score.
He's trying to perform the Cammy score.
What'd you do last night? The Cammy score?
Cammy score.
High fives from his brother. but go back. I challenge you to go back and watch the first half hour of this movie. You know, it's there. It's there. There's this very Western feel, but it reminded me of They Live a lot.
I mean, there was that scene, we didn't mention it before, where Neil walks into the electronics store and says, "I'm here to do 2 things."
Well, and that Steve Martin Keith David fight in the alley.
Yeah, when Keith Martin suplexed Steve Martin.
Keith Martin,
him too. Yeah, Steve David and Keith Martin. Yep. It's been a long day, my friend.
Well, it's like John Hughes and John Candy. I switched their first names too.
Yeah, it's so easy to get those 2 mixed up.
Oh, my second good is just real simple plot. Like the plot.
Yeah.
It was like their trip. It gave us a beginning and it gave us an end, and then got out of the way and let it happen. And so that really benefited the actors in the scenes, as it wasn't like there's some convoluted piece rolling through that added some extra weight we didn't need. And then third is just that car ride, just the zaniness of, because really up until the rental car thing, everything was just kind of bad karma, bad situation. And then they get the rental car and things just kind of went haywire. And it was just fun to see, the film crew lean into it. The driving the wrong way, the catching both sleeves, the cigarette, like just, it was just up until this point, it was just a series of unfortunate events. But then this rental car on I-55 was just ridiculous, and it was just fun. Like I liked it. I liked all of it. As like Neil's just sleeping through all of this.
Yeah, he's just fast asleep.
He's a heavy sleeper.
He is a heavy sleeper. He slept in that beer before.
He did, yeah.
and with Dell's hand between his pillows.
It's true. And he kissed him on the ear. Dell, yeah. Why'd you kiss me on the ear? I did. So those are my 3 goods. What do you got?
My first one is just Dell is a man of the people.
Yes.
Like he understands people so well. Like singing the Flintstones on the bus. Selling the shower curtains.
Yeah.
Knows people in every town. He's just such a personable, affable, genuine guy that people are drawn to him. And it's hard not to like him, and I'll even extend. This is I'm kind of squeezing 2 into 1 here, but also just like how in tune he is with himself, and as we talked about Ford, and I won't go back over everything, but just how his sense of dignity, his sense of self-worth. I like me, my wife likes me. I'm not changing. So that's my first one. He's a man of
It's a
the
good one.
people,
Good one.
and he's very in tune with himself. My second one is, and this I almost didn't mention this because with where you're going with the story.
Uh huh.
So I'll take a similar one with the pacing and the editing.
Uh huh.
The cuts to the, like, again, they cut back to Neil's family, but it's never for more than a moment, because you don't the movie's not about them.
No.
Like, they're going to be there. The movie's not about them. But again, as you kind of referenced earlier, like, you need that target, you need that goal. You need to see the thing that that Neil is longing for,
Right.
and they're there just enough. But the pacing and editing in this movie is so great. This movie's only an hour and a half.
Yeah,
and it doesn't need to be any longer.
No, but they've packed so much in to this hour and a half movie. It's one of those. It's weird. It feels longer than an hour and a half, but not because it drags, but because you're like, they accomplished so much in that time that it feels like it was longer than it was.
Yeah. And my last good is, this movie's take on grief is very authentic, and again, as we talked about with how well they hid that with Dell's wife being gone, and him not having and him being unhoused at this point. And it's really one where you have to reflect on it. But this movie's take on grief, like, he's just wandering.
Yeah.
He keeps himself busy to avoid dealing with his grief, and he's clearly still mourning.
Yes.
And like, how it comes out in just these little snippets with Neil. Like, this movie doesn't dwell on it, but it's one of those, like, in its totality, there's a lot of just Dell trying to manage his, and in a lot of ways failing to manage with his grief. 8 years on. Not that I ever expect anyone to ever fully be able to put something like that behind them, but it's to the point now where he doesn't have a permanent home.
Well, and I get the feel that in the 8 years since Marie passed, he's probably not spent more time with any one person than he has with Neil in 8 years.
Yeah.
And so some of their conversation, like, he's never really had to talk about Marie, because everybody, like, to steal a term from, like, Fight Club, everybody's just like a single serve friend. Like, like he's not carried on enough conversation to actually get to Marie. So he almost slips a couple of times, but I haven't been home in years. Like, but it's like, you're talking to somebody that has been paying attention. So I feel like Neil's the first connection, even though it wasn't a healthy connection, but the first connection with a person he's had probably since his wife died.
Well, and you get the impression, just because Dell knows so many people and has so many connections, that he's had a lot of fun. Yeah, he has a lot of acquaintances.
Exactly.
But he doesn't really have any true friends.
Yeah, because even the whole, like, rental car thing, like, because, like, Neil asked him, like, how'd you rent the car? And he's like, oh, I sold her some, I traded some shower curtain rings. Like, because that's been his go-to line. Neil just finally, it's like, you can't rent a car with shower curtain rings. Like, it's like, because it's like, again, like you said, everybody's just acquaintances. Everything's just surface level conversation with people, just connections. And then Neil's there. And with that being said, Dell's not used to having somebody that's a few more layers into the onion. And so when he does have these conversations, like, when they're having the liquor in the hotel, like, to the wives, and it's just like, Dell's trying to cover it up. And I'm glad they finally got that out.
Yeah. So those are my three goods. Oz, what are your two bads?
My first one is just watching the couple make out on the bus. Like, just, I get it. I do.
It's a little creepy. It's a little cringy.
I get it. You're gonna recognize people doing it.
Sure. You can't not notice that.
It's like, so that part's not there, but it's the whole, like, elbowing Neil, like, look at that. Like, it's just, it's the recognizing it's happening, but then choosing to, like, be entertained by it.
Yeah.
It was kind of cute though, because then after they kind of chew Neil, and and then Dell's kind of chewing on Neil, and then Neil looks back, and they're both just sitting upright having a cigarette,
Yeah.
like they'd gone all the way right there in the bus.
I had a bus full of 50 people.
Right. And so that's my first bad. And my second one, to piggyback on what we were just talking about, I want more of Dell's story.
Sure.
Like, I felt robbed. We're at the end of the movie, and then we get dropped that bomb of my wife died 8 years ago. I don't have a home. I'm like, I want to know more about what Dell's been doing. That's what and we never got any of it.
Well, and it's a lot easier to identify with, with Dell's character than Neil's.
Yeah.
Although you spend more time with Neil and you get more Neil's story, it's clearly written in a way that Dell is the character that you want to kind of root for.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But that just to drop something like that, like a whole character bomb on us in the last 5 minutes of the movie, and then never come back to it. Like, okay, you just told us, like, before the final scene, that one of our main characters has no wife and is homeless. What now? Like, you're taking him to Thanksgiving, but what does Dell do now?
John Hughes is still making movies these days under the pseudonym M. Night Shyamalan.
I know that. So I do know that. Dell takes Neil's daughter to a concert. Turns out he's a serial killer. But no, like that's just those little pieces. It's I mean, kudos to John Hughes to leave us that wanting more, but it's still like, you gave us hardly anything about Dell's character, and you told us that at the end by telling us so much. Oh, my wife's dead and I don't have a home. Okay, well, now I want to know what you're up to. Like, I want to know where you go from here. Does Neil get you a job? Do you get back on your feet somewhere? Like, do you settle down? I just want to know, and then we won't know.
Yeah, and maybe at some point we'll get a sequel, like Big Wheel Submarines and Zeppelins.
There you go. Bicycles, tricycles, and unicycles. I'd like to see John Candy on a unicycle.
I would too. Something tells me he could pull it off.
He probably could.
Yeah.
So those are my two bads. What do you got?
My two bads are not so much about the movie, just first one is men not being able to talk about their insecurities and discomforts.
Yeah.
Like the pillow sequence is like another man was touching my butt. How about them bears?
Yeah. I'm so tough and macho.
Yeah, get past your masculinity.
I mean, I don't want guys touching my butt in bed either, but
like.
I would just be like, hey, let's not touch my butt anymore.
Yeah. my hand has a mind of its own. Right. My second bad is why, as much as I like Dell, why do people think it's okay to take their shoes off on airplanes?
Yeah.
No, don't do that, folks. If you're in a public place, don't take off your shoes.
Nope.
Just please don't. My dogs are barking.
And then pulls his socks off too. Like, no, don't do that.
He even tries to do it in the rental car too.
Yeah.
Like, he finally gets comfortable. Oh, I can't reach my feet.
How am I gonna get comfortable if I have my shoes on? You don't. Like,
I will say my daughter is the same way. As soon as she gets home from anywhere, the first thing she does, those shoes and socks just come flying off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she and Dale have a lot in common.
A lot. I've seen
she's also got a future in shower.
I was
going to
say, I've seen your dog pedal shower curtain rings.
Yeah, yep. All right, hey Oz, what's your
I have two. My first one's kind of a joke. My second one's the real one.
Got it.
So, who would Neil vote for in this election cycle? I think that's an obvious one. But my real one is, how much cash does Neil carry? He paid that lawyer $75 to not get a cab.
Yeah.
Then he had $700 in cash stolen from him at the hotel. Over $700 is what he said. There was over $700 in my wallet. Like, how much cash does he carry? That's my
Yeah, you ever heard of traveler's checks,
right.
Neil?
And I understand that you have a Diners Club card, but it's you carry cash. But how much? How much are you carrying? So
Like Dell's credit card is the some like regional like big and tall men's
yeah,
clothing
yeah,
store in like Oregon and Washington.
yeah, yeah.
You got 6 or 7 locations.
Yeah, I did like that too. So that's my real hunt. How much cash is he carrying? So what's your hunt?
Okay, all right. My pull out your Rand McNally Atlas here.
Gotcha.
So it's about a 5-hour drive on I-55 from St. Louis to Chicago.
Right.
And they switched driving several times.
Yes.
It's pitch black. It's still daylight when they leave the car rental place in St. Louis, and
Yeah.
it's pitch black. And they switch drivers a couple of times. I think it starts with Dell, and then Neil's driving, and then
Right.
Dell's driving again. And then by the time they get in the milk freezer car, there's still 3 hours to go.
Yeah.
So did all of that in the rental car occur between St. Louis and Springfield, Illinois? Like all of that.
Wikipedia, if you go to Wikipedia's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles,
Mm-hmm.
they have a map, the route taken by Del Griffith and Neil Page in the film. I'm looking at it right now. And they've got a legend. They've got the intended route.
I see it. Yeah.
So yeah, that rental car trip looks like it went from St. Louis to roughly Springfield. And yeah, a lot happened in that trip.
Yeah. And in the background, when the car's on fire,
yeah,
there's a sign that says Chicago 102 miles. 3 hours. That's a long trip, and that's 102 miles to take 3 hours to get to Chicago.
Yeah, like how many stops did the milk have to milk? Like, is this a milkman? It's just like
they're going from farm to farm.
He's the Tri-County milkman. Like,
yep.
You guys are in for a long ride. But yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, 3 hours to go 102 miles in a semi.
Yeah, and how often do you have to switch drivers in a 2-hour span?
Right. Yeah.
So
your turn. I want to get a nap in.
I question your logic here, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
I don't think John Hughes is as informed of downstate Illinois as he is with.
Well, he shoots everything upstate
with the collar counties. I think he's one of those. If you're south of 80, like
yeah.
So, but no, that was a great film. Great film.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Oz, what do we got next week? Wrapping up Candyland.
We are wrapping up Candyland month.
Sadly wrapping it up.
Yes, with one of my wife's favorite movies. The plan was she and I were going to watch all the movies together this month, but we're trying to push ourselves through The Sopranos, which we've not seen before. And so we find ourselves watching an episode of The Sopranos each night. But one of her favorite John Candy movies, and what we're going to wrap up the month with, is 1985's Summer Rental.
Yeah.
Carl Reiner directed film.
Yes. No John Hughes involvement.
No John Hughes involvement in this one. Summer Rental is what we're going to be watching to wrap up Candyland month before we reveal September's theme.
Mm-hmm. Which I know you're excited about.
I am. It's going to be a dumb month, but that's okay. Like,
yeah. Well, there's one movie in particular you're very excited about.
Yeah, it's going to be terrible though. But I know that. But the other two of the three will at least save it for sure.
I will say I watched the first movie in the month earlier today, and I was laughing a lot more than I expected. I have seen it before, but it's probably been 20 years.
It's been a long time for me as well. Okay, I'll give it that. So yeah, the last one will just be it's a gimme. It's like a buy 3 get 1 free kind of sale. Yeah. And so we'll take a flyer on that trash. But
sure.
But no, Summer Rental is what we're going to watch for next week to wrap up Candyland month. Social media wise, you guys can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Patreon link down below if you'd like to join the crew. But other than that, I think it's been a great month so far, and I hope next week.
Very enjoyable month. Yeah,
is just as equally fun. Have you ever seen Summer Rental before?
It's been a long time,
yeah.
But yes, I have seen it.
There's a lot of innocence to it, but
yes, there is.
But because it's not a John Hughes related film,
it's got a different flavor.
It does have a different vibe to it, but it's still fun.
Yeah,
this movie, it's Carl Reiner. I mean, it definitely feels more like summer school than than in John Hughes films.
Yeah, than Uncle Buck.
Than Uncle Buck. So, all right. Well, for another episode of Let's Talk About Flicks, I'm Oz.
I'm Curtis.
We'll see you guys next week with Summer Rental.